Hey, what's up, guys? It's Captain James here. Today we're talking about how to troll for bluefin in Northern California. It's a little bit different than SoCal, I guess, because our water's not as clear, and we're trolling in a little bit colder water than down in SoCal. SoCal has consistent warm water down there, and they have more consistent deep water too. Most of the water down there is, 10,000 feet deep, right away, versus ours, which is, we have to go out to the shelf to get that deep water. So anyway, I'm going to talk about, how we kind of started trolling these Mad Max up here. It's fairly new. And then I'm going to talk about, some stuff that I learned down in SoCal. And I'm going to apply some of that up here this season. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit too. So I'll start with the Mad Max. When you're trolling these, you want to tie directly to the lure. You don't want to have a big snap swivel back there. It's going to look, if the fish have any time to look at it and they see this in front of this, they're going to, if they have a chance to look at it a couple times, they're probably not going to hit it. So we want to tie directly to the lure, and it's going to make the lure run better. If you have a snap swivel back there, it might throw the lure off a little bit, So anyway, we'll get started. Right now, I have this one tied on. I'm going to cut it off and kind of show you how to tie that San Diego jam knot. That's the preferred knot that we use. I have a 50 wide Penn International VizX, and what I have here is a top shot. It's a fluoro. It's a poly mono top shot with a braid underneath. I think this is about 150 pound mono, and then I have 100 pound braid underneath. So anyway, I'm going to give myself some slack here. Get this thing, get this baby cut off so I can show you this jam knot. So just so we're clear, I'm not sponsored by Mad Mac or anything like that. So this is just what we use. I'm going to use a smaller one just for the video because it's easier. All right. So we got your line, got your little D ring, or your little ring right there. We're going to go through that, just through it once. Give yourself a lot of line. I'm going to go up to that kink right there. All right, so you're just kind of hanging there like that. Now you're going to take your tag in. There's a long tag in that I have. You're going to loop it once like that. And you're going to grab all three lines. And kind of get that loop in one of your fingers there, and then kind of grab there. All right, so you have three lines in your fingers right now. You're going to take your tag in, you're going to wrap it a bunch of times. Wrap it, wrap it, wrap it. Go like 8 times or so. All right, so now it looks like this. Now you're going to take your, it's going to help, if you have this hanging from something, it's going to help you a lot. Right now I just kind of have it hanging in the air, but it makes it a little bit more difficult. Now you're going to take your tag in, and you're going to go through both loops you made. So you got a loop here at the bottom, and then you got a loop at the top where your finger is. And then you're going to pull it tight. So if you hang this somewhere and then pull it tight, all right, it's kind of hard to, now you can't see it because it's, let me see if I can get this camera angled. You're going to kind of pull them tight at the same time, and then you get that cinch down. If you can get this not wet before you do that, you're going to be better off. I didn't do it because I didn't want to, for the video, I didn't want to be licking it. So anyway, so that's it. That's your San Diego jam knot. Nice and tight. The harder you pull it, the tighter it gets. So that's what we want on these big fish, because when you're fighting a fish for, you know, 10 to 30 minutes, or even an hour if you're not using the right gear, you want your knot and your swivels and your hardware, your tackle, to hold up to these big fish, because you know, it's a long time to be fighting a fish, and anything can go wrong in that time. All right, so I'm going to cut this off because I'm going to show you something else. When you troll these, you can go anywhere from 9 miles an hour up to 14 miles an hour. You want it way back behind the boat, because if you see a boil, or you see fish jumping and stuff like that, maybe you see a whole bunch of fish on eating some anchovies or some sardines, or you see a whale out there eating anchovies, you don't want to drive the boat directly over the fish. You want to go take a wide turn around them, and as you turn, you're going to pull your lure through the fish, or just to the outside of the fish if you're really good, because you want it to look like a bait fleeing that bait ball. So if a bait gets away and it's fleeing that bait ball that the whales or other fish have created, then that's what that bluefin wants. It wants to target a single, you know, big bait. So anyway, don't troll directly over the fish. If you get too close to the fish, they're going to go down and they're going to disappear. You're never going to see them again. Other than that, if you don't see a bait ball anywhere, just keep trolling straight, turn around, troll the other way. But you want to keep it way back there. So what we usually do is just kind of so we know where we are. When we start lowering, you count. You count to 30 seconds, or you count to 60 seconds, or whatever. What you don't want is two lures traveling next to each other, because when you turn, you're gonna tangle them up together, and you're never even gonna know they're tangled until you check them. So you could be tangled for 30 minutes and not even know it. To avoid those tangles, you got to have one halfway back, and then have one all the way back, so they're different distances. If you have two different sizes, it's even better, because one's going deeper and one's shallower. And then if your distance is differentiated or whatever with your seconds, now when you turn, the lures can go like this and never get tangled. You know what I'm saying? So I like to use different sizes. They have a 240, which is this huge one, and then they have a 220. These are both 240s, and then they have a 200, 180. So here's a 200, so you can see how different these sizes are. So I like to do a 240 and a 200. Sometimes I'll even go smaller. If you have smaller baits out there and a big bait ball, you go smaller. But the problem with the smaller ones is you got this heavy line and a small lure, and if you troll too fast, your lure is going to be skipping across the surface. And since it's going to be way back there, you're never even going to know that it's not running right. So I like to go 10 and 12 miles an hour myself, but because if I go 14, I'm using a lot of fuel. Anyway, if you don't want to troll fast and you want to troll a little bit slower, you can use these spreader bars. Now what this is called a dial spreader bar. And you know, it's like a whole school of squid or bait or whatever they think it is. It doesn't really matter. This is the color that is tried and true, and it's got this dial on here. So what this dial does is it keeps, so I'll run 2 of these spreaders, and it keeps them wide, far apart, right? So I can do one on one side of the boat, one on the other, and turn the dial, and it's like a side planer. So it keeps this, you know, this rig way back there, keeps them far away from each other. You know, I can have one going that way and one going that way. And I'll put these back there to where you could barely see them. That's about as far as you want them back there. You don't have to go as far as the Mad Mac with these. That's what's also nice about them. And on this one, I have a purple squid on the very back. That's the dying one. That's why it's purple. So that's the one that you want the fish to grab. With these, you go 9 miles an hour with these. So that's another nice thing. So I don't have to troll as fast, and you know, it's a little bit more economical with the fuel. These are a little bit different when you tie them on. So these have a rash guard on the leader here. I don't want to tie directly to that. I want to go to a snap swivel and then put the snap swivel on here. These are rated, so this is a Sterling. Again, I'm not Sterling dial tracker is what it's called. I'm not sponsored by these guys. I just know that these work because I've caught fish on them. And honestly, I like using these better than the Mad Mac. For the snap swivel, I have a 230-pound snap swivel. So it seems like overkill, but that lure, that spreader bar is $175. All right, I don't want to lose it, and I don't want to lose a fish either. So I'm going to go really as heavy as I can on the snap swivel without being gargantuan. And I'm doing the same thing. It's the San Diego jam knot again on this. And I could actually get away with a Palomar knot, which is a lot easier on this because it's small. I can, but the San Diego jam knot's more streamlined, you know, so it just seems better for trolling. The Palomar knot has that double line going over the top, so I really like that one too. So I guess I'll just show you a Palomar knot real quick. I already showed you the. So anyway, the Palomar, you just make a loop. Put the loop through the eye, tie just a normal overhand knot. Don't, make sure these lines aren't twisted, because if they're twisted, they can put pressure on each other, and when you're fighting the fish, it could actually break the line. So this one you definitely have to lube up. Anyway, so sorry, I got, all right, overhand knot. Don't pull it tight, just kind of snug right there. Now put your snap swivel through the loop. And then lube it up and grab the tag end, pull it tight. Grab the main line, pull it tight, and that's it. The tighter it gets, or when you're fighting a fish, the more pressure is put on it, the tighter it gets. So it'll just keep tightening up. And if you see, it's got that double line on the eye, so that's what makes this knot extra strong. That's why I like this knot. So anyway, it's just an ugly knot, you know, it's not streamlined, it's not pretty like that San Diego jam knot. Anyway, cut the tag end off. Now you got this nice heavy snap swivel. snap it on to this spreader bar, and you're ready to fish. With these, you lay them in the water. I mean, it's kind of hard to set this gear, but you just lay it in the water and then start letting out, and you can see it back there splashing. These birds, they skip and splash across the surface. They make quite a commotion back there. You know, there's a couple birds on them. There's another bird there, another bird there. Just kind of, you know, these end up getting kind of bent, but it's all right. Just make sure it's running right before you let it all the way back there. And these are beautiful. I love running these. So anyway, they're kind of hard to put away, but all right. Let's see what else. When you're trolling for bluefin, you cannot use Scotty rod holders, or even plastic. The Burning Wind plastic rod holders will not work on these, especially on the Mad Max. These pull, they have so much pressure when you're trolling, dragging behind the boat. They're just, you know, you can barely hold on to the rod. There's so much pressure on them. So if you use plastic rod holders, it's going to break the rod holder, especially, you know, even if you after you hook a fish, you're going to have that drag set tight. And these plastic rod holders will snap right off. So another thing I do, you know, because I'm worried about that, I have a dog leash. Let's see, let me take this off here. So I run a dog leash on the rail of my boat there. See that? It's kind of looped around, and then I hook that dog leash to the reel. Let's see what else. I'll put this back up. I'm going to show you the rod holders that I use. All right, rod holders. You have to use heavy duty rod holders for trolling for these fish. This is one option that I have. These are called Trax Tech. I'm not sponsored by these people either. But these are really heavy duty. They clamp to your rail. I take them off while we're fishing for something that requires a net, because the net kind of gets hung up on this. So if I'm not fishing for salmon or something like that, if I am fishing for salmon that requires a net, I take them off. Just because they get in the way and they tangle up with everything. So, but for bluefin, albacore, I use these. They're about $250 each, you know, with this assembly. Burning Wind makes a stainless steel rod holder for bluefin that, you know, that goes on. I'm gonna turn this around. Oh, I can't. Dang it. All right. Burning Wind makes a rod holder that goes into this, but they're $500 each, so that's why I don't have those. Maybe someday I can afford those, and those will be nice because they just pop right out, you know, in one easy step. These take me, you know, 10 minutes to take them on and off with these nuts and bolts. So, you know, it's a little bit of a hassle when I have to switch back and forth between salmon and tuna, but, you know, that's part of the gig. So, let's see. Another option would be a kite with a helium balloon, or if it's windy enough, you can just use a kite by itself. But with that, you would use a flying fish. You know, I don't have all that stuff here, so I'm not going to show you that at the moment. So maybe next time, you know, have all that set up and I can show you guys how to use a kite with a flying fish rig. You know, it's a little bit more technical. And, you know, with that, it kind of requires, it's kind of hard to show in a video, but, you know, maybe someday I'll be able to do that. So anyway, that's it. You know, easy trolling's fairly simple. It's easy to learn, easy to do, and you don't need a whole lot of gear to do it. You know, one thing I'd like to add is that you need to be very specific with your gear, with your Top Shot line, your knot. When you do your braid to mono knot, that's really important. That's, you know, perfectly tied and secured really well. Because if you hook up to a 150-pound class fish, you don't want anything to fail. Any of those little things can fail after you're fighting a fish for a long time. The proper reel is really important. Don't go with a cheap reel that's going to break. These fish put a lot of pressure on your gear and your tackle, and it can actually heat it up and break it. So it's really important to not go cheap with any of your stuff. Another thing we do is we change out the hook on the Mad Mac. We put a nice big treble on the back. There's a brand called Raptor treble hooks. They're probably the strongest hook you can buy. These aren't, but you want to make sure you're 4X or 5X strong on these. On the front hook, I'll leave the stock hook on. You could also change this to the treble too, you know, if you want to get, well, if you want to spend the money on it, really. Everything's expensive, you know, with this. Every little thing you buy. With these split rings, you need to buy a special split ring plier. A normal split ring plier won't open that big enough to change the hook. So, you know, all this stuff adds up. It gets expensive. Let's see what else. You know, I use stubborn rods. I'll show you why. You know, your rod is really important too. If you go cheap on the rod and they have cheap guides, these guides will heat up and cause your line to break. So stubborn rods uses silicon carbide guides. It's kind of like glass and really smooth. So your line won't heat up when the fish takes a long run, or you have a lot of pressure and you're torquing down on the reel. It's a game of inches, and you put a lot of you build up a lot of heat on these guides in the line, so you want to make sure you have a good rod too. While you're fighting the fish, let me put this away and I'll explain something else. When you're fighting the fish, it's really important to use your motor too on your boat and have a good captain that can help you fight the fish. So I'll be on the back helm here. I'll select the back and I'll be back here involved. I like to get the fish on the other side, on the port side of the boat. So, I'll turn sorry, my finger's covering the screen. I'll usually turn the motor to steer to port. So I'll turn left, all the way to the left, and I'll put the motor in forward and reverse only. So if the fish tries to go under the boat, I'll put the motor in reverse, and it turns the bow around and it gets that fish pointed away from the boat. A lot of fish are lost because the fish will make a run underneath the boat and the line rubs the boat with all that pressure and breaks the line. So, and if the fish goes towards the bow, it's the same thing. I can just put it in reverse and get that fish off to the side of the boat. And in some cases, I got to put it in forward sometimes. If the fish is swimming towards the boat and whoever's reeling can't keep up, I'll put it in forward and help keep pressure on the hook, on the lure. So, when the fish starts pinwheeling underneath the boat, usually when the bluefin, when they give up, they start swimming in circles under the boat. That's when you've won the battle, but you need to keep going. Sometimes you can put the reel in low gear and just crank it in. As long as if you trust your line good enough, at that moment, you can put it in low gear and just crank them in. Some guys don't do that. Some guys leave it in high. You know when that fish gives up, you will know. It'll act different. You know, it stops taking line, and it just does circles under the boat. Once you get it close to the boat, it'll do that big circle around underneath the boat. And you just got to make sure you don't get that line rubbed against the bottom of the boat, because that's when you lose the fish. When you gaff it, try to gaff it in the head, somewhere in the head, or you know, the forward half of the fish. And you know, as soon as you get one gaff, have somebody else grab another gaff and get a second gaff and pull it over the side as fast as you can. You don't want to sit there with a gaff in it while that fish is, you know, making all that commotion on the surface. That's when the lure can really pop out and you lose the fish that way. If the lure pops out and it shakes off the one gaff, then you're going to lose the fish. So try to get a second gaff as fast as possible and get it over the side. You know, and try to stay calm, you know, in these moments, because if you get too excited, you're going to make mistakes. So when you see the fish and your adrenaline's going, try to stuff that down and just try to stay calm. And that's it. I will hopefully, you know, on the next video, I'll be able to add, you know, some footage of us catching our next fish. And I'll see you out on the water.